Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted to be sharing with you a very special episode. I'm going to be sharing more about my most recent challenge, cycling down the Pacific Coast Highway and Baja California. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to the Tough Girl podcast. I'm super excited that you're here today with me. Now, if you are new to the podcast, you're probably thinking, what is going on? What is this episode? Is this what normally happens on a Tough Girl podcast? It isn't. So normally on the Tough Girl podcast, I interview other female adventurers, explorers, women of all backgrounds, different ages, and help to share their challenges and adventures. But what I've been doing recently is I have been on my own adventure, an own challenge. So in September of 2018, I flew off to Vancouver to start my cycle down the Pacific Coast Highway, and I then continued down into Mexico through Baja California. So I actually did a solo episode where I got interviewed by my sister back in September and shared more about all of the planning and the preparation and how I got ready for a trip, an adventure like this. So if you haven't listened to that episode, then do go back to the beginning of September and take a listen, and that will just give you a little bit more background about who I am, what I'm doing. Otherwise, it might be a bit random if you're just tuning in for your first episode. But my name is Sarah Williams. I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast. I'm behind Tough Girl Challenges, which is all about motivating and inspiring women and girls to get fit and active, to travel and explore, to challenge themselves, to step outside their comfort zone, to grow, to develop, and to be the best person that they can possibly be. And it's also about increasing the amount of female role models in the media. And the ways that I do that is by interviewing these incredible women on the Tough Girl podcast. But if I'm out there talking the talk, I also need to walk the walk, or in this case, cycle the cycle, or cycle the bike, as it may be. So in 2018, I decided that I wanted to step outside my comfort zone and to cycle the Pacific Coast Highway and the Baja Divide, which turned into Baja California. But I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. I've reached out to the Tough Girl Tribe, which is a closed community for the patrons and supporters of the Tough Girl podcast, to ask them, what questions do you want to ask me about this challenge and this journey? So I'm going to go through these questions and basically answer them. I put the question out into the closed Facebook group, but I haven't been through to read all the questions. So I'm going to be reading them for the first time now. So yeah, let's kick it off. So Ali Mahoney Johnson, how did you choose your bike? So basically I had a dilemma. Do I buy a bike before I head over to Vancouver? Do I buy a bike in Vancouver? And what I decided for me was I was going to just fly into Vancouver and pick up a bike there. And I did some research and found basically a bike shop which repaired old bikes. So I Googled them. They found they had 3 shops, went to the closest shop, walked into the shop on like the day after I arrived in Vancouver, so maybe the 5th or 6th of September. This is all vlogged as well, so you'll be able to watch this interaction on YouTube. And walked into the shop and got chatting to the man there. And I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to cycle down Pacific Coast Highway. What bikes do you have for me? And his first response was, so how much do you want to spend? And I was like, nothing. I have no money. What's the cheapest bike you have? So I ended up pointing out these bikes, which were like $1,500 Canadian dollars. And I was like, no. As in, what about those bikes in the corner, which all looked a little bit rusted, a little bit antique-y, a little bit old? Basically, will any of them do the job for me? And so we had a little bit of back and forth, and there was only really 3 bikes for me to choose from. So it wasn't really a question of choosing a bike. It was which bike was going to fit me, because I am tall, I am 5'9". So they ended up picking me, or I ended up selecting, or the only bike which would fit me, which was this vintage CTI, GTI. I have to say, unfortunately, I am not bike technical. So I very much have to rely on other people's expertise. But, it looked like a good, solid bike. He said it would do the job. It had all been repaired and refreshed and everything else. So that was pretty easy. So once I got the bike, I was like, right, can you add on the back, the bike rack at the back? Can you add on a mirror? I need a bell. I need a pump. I need a bike lock. Left that with him for about an hour and a half, and then came back, and then suddenly I had my bike. And I have to say, it was pretty scary riding out of the bike shop for the first time. I actually didn't want to ride the bike because there was a little bit of a downhill. I thought, I'm going to walk this section, and I was a little bit scared of riding on the road. So I found this sort of quiet side street because I had to cycle back to the hostel. And I was nervous. I was apprehensive. And to be honest, it was like oh my goodness, this is all becoming very real now. I'm going to be cycling this bike all the way down to Los Angeles because I needed to change bikes. But I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So basically, I didn't choose the bike chose me, and it was just because it was one of the cheapest bikes there that would do the job. Second question from Ali, how did you navigate? So it's pretty easy, to be honest, on the Pacific Coast Highway. I'm going to try and break this down to two sections: Pacific Coast Highway and the Baja section. Navigation was basically keep the coast on the right hand side. Majority of the time you were on the same road, so the 101 heading down south. I did also have Google Maps on my phone, which you can obviously use in airplane mode. Occasionally, sometimes I'd be in like the middle of nowhere and there'd be these little roads, but I couldn't see these roads on Google Maps. So then I'd have to like turn my phone on, and it was all like a bit of a nightmare. So the navigation, it wasn't really that difficult. There was also like, do I want to say signposts? But yeah, there was basically like arrows pointing the way or different signs saying, bike pass and Pacific Coast Highway. So that was pretty easy. Navigating on Baja California was slightly different, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. How did you choose what to pack? To be honest, this is another question from Ali. I'm very minimalist. I don't really have a lot of stuff. And from doing the Appalachian Trail, I was very conscious of weight. And so I knew that I needed to be very lightweight. But I think this time, because I was on a bike, I probably ended up throwing more stuff in. It was just a question of almost, what did I have? So I needed to start with the basics. So, I had my tent, I had my sleeping mat, I had my sleeping bag, I had my blow up lantern, I had my pillow, so everything that goes inside the tent. I then had, there was stuff for the bike. Then it was just a question of what clothes do I wear. So one pair of trainers, I had 2 pairs of socks, or maybe 3 pairs of socks. I didn't really need 3 pairs, so I needed 2. And then for clothes, it was the clothes that I would cycle in, and then I'd have the clothes that I would sleep in. And I also threw in a few items to wear when I was in town, like my denim miniskirt, for example. I had a couple of fleeces and warm clothes because I do feel the cold at night, a few little toiletries. And then the rest, or the heaviest gear that I was carrying was actually my electrical gear. So I decided I wanted to take along my laptop. I had my gimbal for my GoPro. I had my power battery for extra charge. I had obviously like my iPhone, the chargers and wires for that. I had adapters. I had my external hard drive. So I had a lot of that stuff, which was very, very heavy. I also had my Kindle. But basically it was just trying to be efficient. And what I do is when I'm at home preparing for trips, I use basically the spare bedroom to lay out everything that I need. So things like electrolyte tablets will go in there. My first aid kit stuff will go in there. My dry bags will go in the room. So I can I'm a very visual person, so I can see it all laid out to see what I would need to take. Next question from Annie Mahoney Johnson. What would you do differently on your next bike packing trip? Okay, so I suppose in my head, I thought it was going to be very easy for me to do. It's almost like 2 separate challenges. So Pacific Coast Highway is road riding, and you can do that on a road bike. And then you've got Baja Divide. Now, Baja Divide is an off-road mountain biking route through Baja California. Now, what I didn't realize is how different it was. It was basically 2 very, very separate challenges, and you actually need different bikes and also different gear. So how you travel with your gear is very different. So on the Pacific Coast Highway, I had 2 panniers on the back of my bike and 1 very small front bag on the front of my bike, which was great for the Pacific Coast Highway. However, halfway down, a great friend from the Tough Girl tribe, another girl called Ellen, offered me her bike for the off-road section. So she's got this amazing Surly bike. Her parents live 200 miles north of LA, and the bike has got, almost like 3-inch tires. It's very sturdy. It's very solid. It's a proper off-road mountain bike. So I ended up picking up that bike just north of LA to do the off-road section in Baja. But the problem was that my stuff is too heavy. Basically, my electrical gear, which I basically didn't really use, just weighed me down, and I was having it in panniers. Now, when you're in the off-road section, you you don't want panniers because it's just too heavy on the back of the bike. And also my weight distribution wasn't great. So when I started adding in more food and more water, which I tried to do on the front of the bike, it was basically off balance, too heavy, and the panniers were just a nightmare. Now, this isn't a complaint about the bike. The bike was perfect. It was how I loaded it. So what happened when I got down into Baja California is I started riding on the off-road section on the Surly, and on the first day my chain actually broke, which is obviously a bit of a nightmare because I'd been more worried about the tires and, tires popping because of the cactus thorns and being able to fix the tires. So the chain broke. We were about 20 odd miles, maybe a little bit more into the desert, and it was like, oh no, well, this isn't great because I don't have the knowledge or the expertise to be able to change or fix a chain. So I was at this point riding with two guys, Dom and Andrew. And Andrew did have all the gear, uber prepared, had everything, and he'd done a mechanics course, and he had the gear. So he was able to fix my chain, which was fantastic. So that was sort of the first sort of thing that happened. I thought, okay, this isn't this great. So carried on riding for the next sort of 2 or 3 days. And then the next thing that happened was my back rack ended up breaking because of basically the weight. So there's a whole story behind that, which I'll go into a little bit later on. So by the time I sort of got my bike out of the desert and I got to a bike shop, it's called FASS Bike Shop in Vicente Guerrera, and it's run by this incredible guy called Salvador. And I took the bike in. I was like, look, this is the problem. What are my options? And he basically said to me, look, a bike rack, it just doesn't work in Baja California. If you're doing the off-road section, you need to have the pack which comes out. I'm going to have to describe it. But you've got like a bike seat and you have that pack which sort of sticks out behind. And then you have another front pack and maybe the pack which goes in the middle of the bike frame. And then you have the water attached at the front and on the back, etc. And he's seen this problem lots and lots of times. So I'm now in Baja California with 2 panniers and my small little front bag. And I've got the option of, well, what do I do? So my option is that I can change, buy new gear, new bags, but then I'd have to be able to fit my gear into those new bags. That wasn't going to be possible because my gear was just too heavy because of all the electrical stuff that I was carrying. Or do I change the rack out, put another rack on, and then continue riding on the road? Sorry. So I was having to go through all like the costs involved of buying a new rack. I mean, I'd have to buy a new rack anyway to replace that for Ellen because that's obviously only fair. I borrowed her bike. Or do I buy whole new equipment for the ride? So just coming back to Ali's question is, what would you do differently on your next bike packing trip? This sounds weird coming from me, but I try to do less. I don't think it was a very bad decision of me to try and do these 2 very, very separate challenges in one go because I didn't have the right bike and I didn't have the right equipment. And I've learned that since, like looking back now, changing the bike halfway through, then cycling down to Cabo San Lucas, having to post the bike back, which it cost me an absolute fortune to post back. Like I was almost in tears when I was at DHL, because from my research, obviously need to do better my research. I thought it was going to cost more like $85 to $100, and it ended up costing me close to $500, just shy, like $485, so £380 to post the bike back, which is a seriously big hit to take. But you make these decisions, and there are always consequences, and you learn from them. So what would you do differently on your next bike packing trip? Not make it so different. So what I should have done is kept my bike that I'd be ridden on the Pacific Coast Highway and just continue to ride down on the roads. Then it would have saved me a lot of hassle. It would have saved me a lot of money. And I wouldn't have had as many of the issues and the challenges that I had. But that, obviously that is hindsight, and I didn't know what I didn't know. Like I knew the Baja Divide was going to be challenging, but I didn't realize that it was pretty much impossible to do it in panniers. I also didn't realize like how heavy. I knew my gear was heavy, but the difference it makes when you're on a mountain bike. So next question from Lou Blue, I can't say it. Lou Blue D is, how did you navigate? So I talked about the navigating on Pacific Coast Highway. Navigating on the Baja Divide was very, very different. So I actually got a Garmin Extra 10, which actually a very, very kind person from Switzerland, Satu, I basically bought a brand new one, which was maybe like £150 or something like that, emailed me saying, oh, Sarah, look, I've got one. I've only used it once. Would you like it? I'm happy to send it over to you. I think she charged me like £60 maybe. So I was like, oh my God, that would be amazing. So I had this, and the Garmin Extra, you basically load the maps onto it, and it basically shows you where you are, and you can see if you're following like the navigation line. I was a little bit nervous about using it because I never used it. I tried to use it on the Pacific Coast Highway, but to be honest, you just didn't really need to, and I wasn't in that sort of pressured environment where it was, you need to know how to use this. So when I did get onto the Baja Divide, when the three of us started riding, I started using it so I could test my navigation skills to see, was I able to do it by myself? And to be fair, it was very, very easy to do. And once you'd done it, the first few times and you got the hang of it, there wasn't really any issues. Next question. How far in advance did you know where you were staying and how did you organise it? So I suppose coming back to the beginning of my trip, I knew flying into Vancouver, I knew I was going to be in Vancouver, staying there for a week. That was booked in advance, maybe like 2 months in advance. I knew how much it was going to cost me, and I'd actually saved that. I had to save that money up separately, and I just put it straight onto my credit card, which I'm using as like a Halifax one. A, so I couldn't spend the money, and B, that I knew it was paid for. After that, I was, especially at the very start of the trip, I was probably a bit more worried about, where am I going to stay? Do I need to book in advance? And I knew I was going to stay at the campsite on a second day. Then I knew I was going to stay at a youth hostel. So basically, I would just look one day ahead to see where I was going and how far I was going to cycle. And I think this is just something that you need to get into your own comfort zone when you're doing. Like, it's nice to have somewhere to aim towards, and so you know how far you're going to be cycling on that day. Occasionally, I didn't know, and occasionally I was in the mood of, let's just see how far. And those are the days where I would end up having maybe a few issues, because I would get somewhere and I'd start feeling really tired, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know where I'm going to stay tonight, or I can't find anywhere. So then you're starting to use like your judgment. So you're looking at, do you want to camp here? How do you feel about it? Do I want to stay in a motel? Do I want to stay in town? So I was generally, as I was going down in my accommodation, I was staying in first off, it was campgrounds. They had like biker hiker rates, especially more in Oregon and California, where you were paying like $5 a night. The very start of the trip in Washington State, it was more like $20 a night, which was a big hit. I also joined up with warm showers, which was great, getting to stay with host families. So you got a bed and a warm shower, and that was free. So that was great. I also occasionally stayed in motels. I think once or twice booked a hotel. A few people paid for accommodation for me on the way down. So, a very kind lady paid for a beautiful hotel for me in Long Beach, which was super, super kind of her. I also stayed with people, friends or people, acquaintances who I've connected with online. So I got interviewed by Goalie, this lovely lady from a podcast called Lessons from a Quitter. So I got interviewed by Goalie, this lovely lady. She invited me to come and stay with her and her family, so I ended up staying there for like 2 days. I also use, I use booking.com as well. I like using that. If I knew that I was going to be staying in a place for quite a long time, so for example Cabo, then I would again book that in advance through booking.com. Lou Blue also asked, what did you pack and not need? To be honest, it was my electrical gear that I just didn't use any of it. So I got a different vlogging camera. So I normally vlog on my GoPro Hero 6, and everybody, talks about the footage and the quality of the film and blah, blah, blah. And so I got a G7X Canon or Sony camera. Sorry, I'm not being very specific. And brought that with me, didn't use it. I brought the gimbal. I used that once in Vancouver. So the gimbal is basically, you can put your GoPro into the gimbal and it smooths out the footage so it's not as rocky. Didn't use it. Yeah, there was loads of electrical stuff that I didn't use. The reason I took my laptop was the plan was for me to be able to edit the vlogs as I went. So both myself and Flynn would be editing. So there'll be two of us editing the vlogs, and we'd be able to get them out on a regular basis. So it'd almost be like the live vlogs coming out, but maybe like just a week behind. It basically just proved it was just the hardest thing ever to get the footage from my GoPro into Dropbox onto my laptop. I mean, it was just the biggest hassle, and sometimes I was having to do it over Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough, so I was waiting for hours and hours and hours to for footage to upload and then to edit it. I didn't have the time, so which actually sort of disappointed me, because it sounds like such a rubbish excuse, because on the Appalachian Trail I was walking from say 7 till 7 every night, and then I was just broken and just slept, and that was all I did. And on the bike trip, at the start I was waking up at like 9, I'd cycle out, I'd do like 5 or 6 hours cycling, but get to a place for 2:33, do a bit of exploring, be in bed for like 7. But having that time to explore obviously cuts into time for editing. So then it comes down to a choice of, well, do I want to, ride somewhere, get somewhere, arrive, and then just sit in a bed, which is obviously where I do my work, and just edit vlogs? And the choice came down with, actually, I thought, no, I'm going to have to edit the vlogs later on when I'm in Australia, because otherwise I'm going to be missing out. I'm not going to be living in the moment. I'm still going to film it all, but it just wasn't possible to do that. Okay, so Ellen Percy. Hi, Ellen. Ellen let me attempt the Appalachian Trail last year. Awesome member of the Tough Girl tribe. How did you find swapping bikes partway through? To be fair, it was really sad. I got quite attached to my first bike, the Beast. But it was sad, but it was also happy, because it's like the evolution. It's like, right, I'm moving on to part 2 of the challenge, and getting onto the Surly. It was different. So you obviously go a lot faster on thinner tires. So suddenly I'm riding like a much bigger bike. And I remember going downhill for the first time on the Surly, but I just felt so safe. It's like riding a tank. And you'd be going, previously every bump on the road, and some of the roads in California were horrendous. And you actually did need like an off-road mountain bike to ride them. And but on the Surly was just like eating up this tarmac, and it was just a smooth ride. If you could keep one, which one would you keep? Unfortunately, rubbish answer, I know. I think I'd actually need both, because I do really love my first bike, which is now actually with the other Ellen's parents' house, and it's just sort of sat there because I enjoyed riding her. I got attached to it, and it was a lot of quality time, but also I really enjoyed riding the Surly as well. It was on the Baja Divide. For the first 4 or 5 days, it was incredible. You're going down these steep mountainous sections and going over these rocks and these bumps and these and riding across the sand. But the bike was helping you sort of like to dominate it, and you felt I certainly felt like after a couple of days, definitely more strong and more confident riding on the Surly. Alison MacArthur, what was the highlight of the trip? And what was the biggest difficulty you had to overcome? Okay, so what was the highlight of the trip? Highlight of the trip for me was the people that I met. So I imagine I've said this before, is I am very, very comfortable and happy spending time by myself. I love spending time by myself. Like I find myself very entertaining. I'm very, I can amuse myself. I love reading. I love doing my work. I love, I can sunbathe all day. I love listening to podcasts. I can watch Netflix. I can, I'm very happy to entertain myself. I can go to the cinema by myself. I'm very comfortable going out for dinner by myself, having lunch by myself, doing stuff by myself. But I think one of the things that I've talked about this year is loneliness. And it's something that's definitely become more apparent to me, that I don't have to always do stuff by myself to be seen as independent, that that for me, so the highlight of this trip was actually meeting people and getting to travel with different groups of people. So I met, I met incredible people. I met this guy called Rob, met this guy called Paddy, and ended up cycling with them for maybe like 2 weeks or so. And then I bumped into Paddy later on and then traveled with him and another guy called Lee. And those are the bits that I remember, because it was really nice being with people who understood, what you were doing this big cycle ride, and they knew why you were doing it. They could understand where you were coming from. The other highlights for me on the trip was actually getting to meet patrons and supporters. So I got to meet Mike, who's been an awesome supporter. I can't remember where we met, but Mike came along and met me on his motorbike, which is a specific motorbike, and had like a sidecar. So we went for a drive on that. He very kindly took me out for dinner, and Mike's been supporting me now for over a year since the Appalachian Trail. So to actually get to meet face to face is incredible, and this is a massive highlight for me as well. I really enjoyed as well. I stayed with another member of the Tough Girl tribe, not a member of Tough Girl tribe, sorry, another patron, another supporter. I stayed with his family, Jody and Dinah, and I went and gave a talk to his local school, to a group called She Warriors, and that was incredible. These girls, I think they were aged between 10 and 11 years old, and talking to them about adventure and challenge, because they were training for their first 5K and were worried about it, because they'd never run for 5 kilometers before, and this is what they were going to do. And so we talked through different fears and how to manage those fears. So that was a super I for me as well. What was the biggest difficulty you had to overcome, and how was the difficulty solved? So members of the tribe will know, because I had to basically write and share what happened to me. So in Baja California, crossing over the border from America into Mexico, it's a border town called Tecate, and there's been a few security incidents there, and it's basically been recommended that you don't cross the border by yourself. You need to do it in a group. So a couple of people have been robbed, of their not their bikes, but their stuff when they've crossed over. And I've obviously read the security update, and as much as you want to be independent, you've also got to be realistic and listen to what is being said. So I thought, okay, do you know what? That tiny area is the bit that I need to obviously do this with some other people. So I joined a Facebook group, Baja Divide, on Facebook, but connected with a couple of other individuals who were doing it. Met this guy called Andrew. We met face to face in San Diego before, ended up riding out with him. Met another guy called Dom, who also came and joined us. So there's 3 of us, me, Andrew and Dom, and we crossed the border together, and we rode together for the first 3-4 days. And it was like we were this team. We were waiting for each other. We were camping together. It was really, really great. And on maybe the 4th or 5th day, we were doing this big mileage, and we climbed up this big steep hill. And now I haven't mountain biked before, and I came to this really very gnarly downhill section, big boulders, big gaping holes. And I thought, you know what, this is too far outside my comfort zone for me to ride this. I'm going to walk this section. So I remember, walking down this section. Andrew walked it as well, because he wasn't experienced as Dom, who was a lot more experienced. And basically, when we were going, we ended up walking down little bits, and then it came to an area. I thought, oh, I can totally ride this. Ended up riding this little bit, and I kept hearing this squeaking noise, and I thought, well, maybe it's just the wheels on the rocks or something. And then my bike basically came to a standstill, I skidded, it felt like I was skidding on the sand. So my back wheel went out from underneath me. I mean, I was still standing, I was fine. And then Andrew rode past me, he carried on riding. And then I tried to start riding again, and the pedals weren't moving. And basically my back wheel had locked completely, and I was like, what is going on? So I got off the bike, had a look, and the back rack had broken and fallen down and was trapped on the wheel, and I couldn't get it up. And I was thinking, this is not good, because I can't even push my bike at this point. So I shouted for Andrew, but he obviously didn't hear me. He carried on cycling. So my first thought was, well, it's okay. The guys are going to wait for me, at the next logical waiting point, maybe like in a couple of miles time or whatever. So this was about 12 o'clock. So I thought, well, they'll wait at 1 o'clock when they haven't seen me. So I ended up turning the bike. This is all vlog, by the way, so you can watch this on the vlog as well. Turn the bike upside down. I took all the panniers off. I turned the bike upside down. I was having a look, trying to figure this out, working the problem, applying common sense, and then basically saw that a screw had broken on the back rack, and then the other side of the rack had basically locked under. So I unhooked it, and then suddenly my back rack could lift up. So I was like, amazing. Okay, I can move the bike. But now the issue is that I have these two big heavy panniers and I can't attach them to the back rack. So how am I going to, I'm going to have to walk the bike or ride the bike, but how am I going to do this? So I attached I had these straps with me. So I basically bungee cord one of my heavier panniers onto the handlebars at the front of my bike. And then the other pannier, I basically had to strap onto my shoulders. And if you look at my panniers, they are very, very tight and they're very, very heavy. But I managed to squeeze my arms in, and then the straps are basically digging into my bones and into my shoulder flesh. Not very comfortable, but you know what? I can walk, I can move, etc. So I started walking with the bike, and for the first, half an hour, it was fine. It was, it was still gnarly, but not that bad. Then there were these huge descents and uphill sections which were very rocky, off-road mountain biking is, and I'm having to use my full body weight to push the bike, and occasionally I'm having to, it's so steep that the pannier which is on the front of the bike is resting on my chest, and I'm basically pushing with both hands and my chest at a 45-degree angle up these slopes, 500 meters up these slopes. Then on the descents, because it's again 40 odd degrees going down, or very, very steep, I'm having to use the brakes on both sides, and sometimes I'm almost skidding down on my shoes. So at this point, it's midday, the sun is beating down, I'm sweating, my back is hurting, my legs are hurting. I kept catching the back of my legs on the pedals, so the back of my legs are being shredded by the pedals. But I kept thinking in my head, oh, it's okay because I'm going to bump into the guys soon because they will have waited for me. And now I know that there's nothing that they can do because you can't fix a broken back rack even with duct tape. But, you just so that they know, look, it's okay. I'll walk myself out and you guys can carry on, but this is what I'll do, etc. I carried on walking for over 4 hours until it got to just before 4 o'clock, and I hadn't bumped into them. So it became very, very apparent to me that they hadn't actually waited for me, which is really disheartening and a little bit upsetting. And the reason it was upsetting is not because they'd left me in the desert, but it was because what if something serious had happened? What if I had broken my leg, for instance? Then they basically would have left me stranded in the desert. So it's now it's now coming up to 4 o'clock, and in the desert at this time in Baja California, when the sun starts going down, it gets very, very cold, especially in November time. So we'd been looking to set up camp from about 3:30 onwards. We look for somewhere to camp because as soon as it goes dark very quickly, you want to have your tent set up, you want to be at your clothes. So as I'm walking, I'm thinking through different scenarios, and for me, my scenarios were basically, well, look, I've got food, I've got water, I've got my tent, I'm physically okay, it's just the bike. So I can set up my tent anywhere and spend the night. The problem is that Dom and Andrew aren't going to know that I've done that. So they're probably going to be worrying about me, but we've got no way to communicate. And you're having this debate with yourself, do I want to camp here? Is it, is this, do I feel safe here? Is this a good space? So you ended up, do I walk a little bit further? So I ended up walking a little bit further and basically came across this family in a truck. There were some ladies sat at the front, and I was just in my very basic Spanish, hola, Santa Tomas. And the ladies were oh, very far, long way. And I'm like, I know, but my bike is broken. Can I get a lift? So I ended up getting my bike in the back of this truck with 4 little kids in the back. It was all very cute. And we continued riding. Sorry, they then drove out, and I'm not joking, it was a 15 to 20 mile drive out. So it would have taken me all of the following day. It got pretty dark pretty quickly, and about 20 past 5, we came into a small little town. And as we were driving along, I heard this voice shout out, like, Sarah! And it was basically Dom and Andrew. They were sat at a convenience store. So what that told me is that they'd basically ridden all the way and hadn't stopped at any point, even though they left at 12 to wait for me. And they decided to wait there at 4 or 5 o'clock because it would have taken them that long to get there, which is fair, fair enough, whatever. Everyone makes their own decisions. I thought that the truck driver was going to be driving me to Santa Thomas, but we just got to the main road, which is now pitch black. And he was like, oh, Santa Thomas this way, like 4 miles, whatever, that way. So I was like, oh, goodness. So what do I do now? Do I ride by myself to Santa Thomas? Do I connect with the guys? So, and also I can't really ride with my pannier, my pannier on my shoulders, the pannier on the front of the bike, etc. So ended up bumping into the guy. They came up to that junction, and the first thing that Dom ended up shouting was like, Sarah, where have you been? We have been so worried about you because we look like the beeps who left you in the desert. And at this point, I'm very tired, quite emotional, and I'm starting to think, hold on, are they trying to flip this so that it is me who's made a mistake because my bike broke and that I wasn't able to communicate with them? That's how it made me feel. And so at this point, I'm very passive aggressive. I don't like confrontation. I don't want to stand there and argue with somebody about, you left me in the desert, you made the wrong choices. For me, it was just like, I just need to get some peace and quiet, get to a safe environment. I need to get to just like a hotel or a motel or just something like that so that I can sort myself out, have a shower, have some food, because I'm very, very tired, and that is not a good time to have any sort of arguments when you're feeling emotional and tired. You're not gonna, it's not gonna be good. So, I don't know if I apologize. I don't know if I said, as women end up doing occasionally, oh no, sorry. I'm not sure I did. I think I was just very quiet. We ended up cycling in the pitch black down to Santa Thomas, found a motel on the side of the road, riding in the pitch black on my bike with a pannier on my back, a pannier on the front of my bike, no lights. I mean, luckily there was a hard shoulder that you could ride on. Most stupid and dangerous thing I've done. Very unimpressed, but it was a case of you just need to get there. Ended up going to the hotel. I mean, I do remember this song because it was on Instagram stories. I didn't share on Instagram stories because it would have been too long a story to share on Instagram stories. But I remember just basically saying, look, I've had a horrendous day. I'm very, very tired. I'm very dirty. My whole body is aching. And I tried to have a shower, and the shower the shower was just like dripping. And in the end, it was just go to bed. But I also knew from that point on that I was not riding with those two again. Trust was broken. And to be honest, I didn't want to look at them. I didn't want to even talk to them. I didn't want to speak to them. I just wanted to cut them out of my life because they're just, I think how the decisions that they made were not the decisions that I would have made. And I felt so emotional about it. I sat down on my phone, went to notes and wrote down this whole massive spiel to remind myself of what happened, how I was feeling, and also to double check that I hadn't misinterpreted the situation, because sometimes you can start to doubt yourself and start thinking, well, hold on, have I made a mistake here? Have I done something wrong? But I got lots of support from the Tough Girl tribe, so I do appreciate all your lovely kind messages that got sent through. It was, so kind, all of your support. So how is the difficulty solved? Well, to be honest, I solved it. So I was out in the desert with a broken bike. There's nobody else there. There's nobody else around. I fixed my bike, and I also knew that I would be walking for the next 5 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. I knew it was going to be about 10, 11 miles of walking. But when you're in that situation, when you have no other choice, that is what you do. And also you've got to be aware is when you put yourself in these situations, things like this can happen. And actually I've got to take responsibility for myself. 100%. It happened to me. My responsibility to get me out. This isn't, it's not the two people that I was traveling with. It wasn't their responsibility, for me. Their responsibility is obviously to themselves, but equally just having that support would be able to explain this is what's happened, and you can figure it out together. So yeah, I fixed it. I got the bike moving. I physically pushed my bike out. I spoke to the truck driver and his family, got the ride into town. And you do learn a lot about not independent things. I'm already independent. I knew that I could get myself out of the situation. It would have been difficult. It would have been more different if I had been injured. But also I did have a spot tracker. Trucks do ride in the off-road section in Baja, so you would be able to thumb down a lift. Sarah Bright, what did you take away from this experience? Did you learn anything new about yourself? I suppose, Sarah, taking away from this experience is just, I suppose, have those dreams. Like, just do things that excite you and that challenge you and that scare you. And for me, it's doing something new and different. I hadn't ridden on a bike before, but I loved it. It's an incredible way of life. It's an incredible way of exploring and seeing the world. And it's very different from hiking. And I enjoy both of them the same. But I think it's also just to sometimes like slow down and just, appreciate. I mean, I do remember riding along certain sections. I remember seeing the Pacific Ocean for the first time and getting very emotional about it. But for me, take away from this experience, just the joy of traveling, the joy of human-powered travel, the joy of being able to see the world and have the freedom to get up, get on your bike, go for a ride and camp at the next spot. The joy to cycle somewhere and to think, do you know what, I'm going to stay here tonight. The joy to arrive at a beach and think, yeah, do you know what, this is gorgeous. Let's just stay here. Second question from Sarah Bright. Did you learn anything new about yourself? I think the key thing that I learned about myself was that I want to do adventures and challenges with other people. I want to do it with friends, with a partner. I do love doing stuff by myself, but I want to do it with other people. I think that was really key for me. Or basically, I need to be more active in finding other people who want to do similar stuff with me and do it together. Helen Dickens, food and nutrition. Helen, you would have been disappointed. My food and nutrition was, again, it was horrendous. Actually, that wasn't as horrendous as the Appalachian Trail, but I wasn't healthy. I wasn't how I'd eat at home. It's too easy. It's very easy to fall into bad habits, I think, when you're cycling on the road, because, ice creams and Gatorade and burgers and chips. And then, people are like, not that I drink beer, but, let's have some wine in the evening, or let's have some tequila and all that sort of stuff. So it's something I'd like to get better at when I travel on the road, but sometimes it is just so difficult. So, for example, in Baja, California, the main shops that you have over there is like a store called Oxo, but when you go in, it's just drinks, it's just crisps, it's just cookies, it's just pastries, it's just carbs. That's all it is. It was so difficult to even find a banana or an apple or any piece of fruit. So that things that I think I know this now, it is just a challenge for me to try and eat healthy. You can't eat how you eat at home. And it's just something you've just got to be, or what I found is I've got to be realistic about it and be like, you know what, I'm going to try and eat as healthily as I can. But actually sometimes you're going to fail, and that's okay. Equally, I'm cycling for 6 or 7 hours every day. So you actually do need the calories. Donna, I hope I don't butcher your last name, Shakalir, Shakalar. What's the biggest surprise finding for you? I suppose this is similar to almost Sarah Bright's question, is just really that how much I want to do this with other people and not just by myself. I think I'm tired of being lonely, if that makes sense. So I want to do it with other people. I want to, travel with other people or do challenges with other people. Shannon O'Lear, bike repair, safety, as always, food, what happened you did not expect. So bike repair. Now, look, I'm going to be really, really honest here. I know nothing about bikes. I know nothing about bike repair, and I had the best of intentions when I started this trip to go on a bike maintenance course. It didn't happen for two reasons. One, I didn't have the money to pay for it, and two, I couldn't actually find a course which was close enough to me. So I would have ended up having to travel to, say, Manchester or London, which are, extra costs involved. I wish I'd done it, and it's something that I would like to do in the future. I think it's very, very important. It's something I would recommend for you to do. Equally, on the Pacific Coast Highway, you're constantly surrounded by people. There's always going to be people around to help you, and I think that's what I find is, I had this one day where just before Leggett, which is one of the highest climbs that you can do on the Pacific Coast Highway, 2 spokes broke on my bike. I didn't know how to fix spokes. I didn't I realized the wheel was wobbling about. I had in that day 16 individual people stop and help me. So 3 guys stopped to help me on the side of the road. One was a mechanic. They had all their tools out trying to fix me. We had to take my back brakes off. The following day, I had to hitch a ride back to Eureka to get my bike fixed. It was, I wish I knew more about bike repair. Bike safety. Safety is always, it's common sense. It's being very, very aware. And I think women will understand this, I understand this, when I go out or when I'm traveling, I am pretty much constantly on guard if I am out. As in, when I say on guard, as in I'm evaluating the people that I'm meeting, the conversations that I'm having. I'm evaluating the body language. I'm evaluating the looks. I'm thinking about who can I trust, who can I not, who can I have a drink with, who can I not have a drink with, who do I need to continue the conversation with, who do I need to basically to be rude to. Rude as in such a way as not prolong the conversation. Who makes me feel uncomfortable, who is making me get that feeling in the gut, in my stomach, in my gut, where I'm thinking, this isn't good, you need to leave this situation. So it's very much applying common sense. It's also just being very aware of where you are. So for example, I was riding along the road, Pacific Coast Highway, need to go to the toilet, pulled into a lay-by, or an area you can go off to the side. But as soon as I did, a truck pulled up behind me with a guy in. So I only wanted to go to the toilet, and I'm sure it would have been fine. But I'm not leaving my bike there, popping into the toilet into the bushes by myself when I know that there's a truck with a guy behind me. So I had to pick up my bike and carry on riding. Now I'm sure he only pulled into the lay-by to actually to use his phone or something. But that was me just applying common sense and thinking, I don't feel safe doing that. I need to carry on, even though I was bursting for the toilet. For safety as well, I also had a spot tracker so my parents could track me. I don't like being tracked. I don't like giving out. I wouldn't have an online map where people can follow me, because at the end of the day, I am a sole female traveling by myself. And it's pretty obvious. You can start working out where people are going to be from the distances that they're doing from what it said previously on the map. And I didn't want that. So that was available to members of the Tough Girl tribe. They just had to email me if they wanted it, and for friends and family. So I knew who would be looking at my map and my tracker. I would not make that public. So that for me was how I felt safe. I felt safe all throughout the trip. I'm just trying to think if I didn't feel safe. You always have instances and you always have comments. And I think actually, I suppose one interesting is, so I met Rob and Paddy. Rob's an American, Paddy's like half German, half Argentinian, this one night. And it's actually on my daily podcast. I think it's like October 14th, 13th, 14th. And I met these people. And to be honest, I didn't like them at first, because there was a group of 6 guys. They were all drinking whiskey, all smoking. There was one other girl there. And she was like a local. And I think she had a few mental health problems going on and wasn't quite all there. And I just thought, this is not, I didn't feel comfortable in that situation, just because, everyone's drunk, there's lots of smoking. And so for me, my vibe that I was giving off was basically serial killer. This is what the guys told me. They basically thought, who is this serial killer? She basically, got into a tent, didn't really speak to people, got into a tent, started reading and, went to bed. But that for me was my form of protection. I'm thinking, do I want to try and talk to these guys? And the answer was no, I don't want to talk to them. I won't get into my tent and forget that they were there. But it was only interesting, later on when you hear, because I think I'm so nice and friendly and bubbly and meeting new people and welcoming and wanting to be like the hostess and wanting to be liked and all this. But that obviously wasn't the vibe that I was giving off. And it took me, I really thought about this, and I thought, you know what? It's okay to give off that vibe occasionally, where it's like, don't mess with me. I'm a badass. Oh, but I don't want to say it. I'm like, literally, you want to give off that don't mess with me vibe. And sometimes you don't want to be sweetness and light. You don't want to be nice. You don't want to be kind. You want to make them think twice before they try something. So I think that was definitely a vibe that I learned. I've probably gone completely off track here. Sal Morgan, how did you look after yourself, e.g. injuries, chafing, etc. when you're on the road? Okay, so I didn't have any injuries. The only injury I had before I started was my left knee, which has been really, really very bad. As soon as I started cycling, 3 days into cycling, never had a problem. When I start walking on it, I do have a problem. No chafing, did not have any chafing. I basically wore my knickers and my black leggings, which I always wear. And I had a gel padded seat for the saddle. And basically I had no issues. But also, some people get a lot of salt and sweat and it gets hard and crusty. That sounds so gross. Hard and crusty. I didn't get any of that. I obviously do sweat, but I don't sweat in a salt way. So my pants, they only got salty twice, I think. But basically, even after a hard day's cycling, if they were wet or damp from sweat, when it dried, it just dried normally. So, no chafing. No chafing. Occasionally had a sore, not even a sore bum, but just my bottom's been in the seat for too long. And then I would just stand up and ride. The only other, obviously, not injuries, but basically after walking out of the desert and pushing my bike and my panniers and everything else, the following couple of days, I struggled to walk. I was hobbling and linking because my whole back had locked, my glutes had locked, my legs had locked, my arms were just completely locked. My whole body I was in a serious amount of pain. So for 3 days, I ended up having massages. I had cupping done. I had these electrodes put on my back. I had my back cracked, which actually massively helped. It was incredible these 3 days, and so that really, really sorted me out. But basically didn't really have any other issues while I was on the road, health wise. I didn't get UTIs. My skin was good. I'm just trying to think of any other injuries. No. I'm really trying to think. I've probably forgotten one, but no real injuries at all. So final couple of questions is so now I'm going on to Instagram and let me just find out where they are. Short J72. You started with some gear but ended up getting lighter during the ride. What do you recommend as must-haves and what is extra weight not worth carrying? So how did I get lighter? What did I get rid of? I got rid of my waterproof jacket as soon as I got into a couple of days into Baja California because I didn't need it anymore. But that was actually really good when I started the trip because the rain was horrendous in Washington State. Ended up getting lighter. What else did I get rid of? I had a foot roller. I got rid of a foot roller. I had a foam roller. I got rid of a foam roller. I don't remember getting rid of anything else. Must-haves and what is extra weight not worth carrying? Must-haves are just going to be your stable pieces of gear. So your tent, your sleeping bag, a cushion. I feel the cold. You all know I hate the cold, hate being cold and wet. So for me, it's very important to be warm at night and for me to be comfortable. So for example, having these black thermal pants that I always wear, they're my tracksuit bottoms, which Ellen actually gave me, which are my favorite pants anywhere. I had a sleeping bag liner, totally worth it. I really liked my blow up lamp, which is a Lucy lamp, LUCI lamp. That was really, really good. Any thoughts on the tent and weight? Very disappointed in my tent. It's a Terra Nova tent, which is actually what I borrowed Ellen's Terra Nova tent, a slightly different model for the Appalachian Trail, and it was amazing. So good. I had no issues at all. I bought the brand new Terra Nova tent. I got an amazing deal in the sale. I think it was £350. I've been saving up for ages to buy this tent. I was very, very disappointed. The pole broke. Occasionally, the tent seemed to have shrunk. It was just a nightmare. So sometimes the tent has basically one big circular pole in the center and two smaller poles which go on the ends. And these little black poles, I just couldn't get them into the tent. They just would not work, would not fit. Terra Nova sent me this extra tent pole out. Doesn't fit, doesn't work. The tent pole's broken in another place. I fixed it with duct tape and it was an absolute nightmare. My tent was very light though. It only weighed £1 sorry, I'm going off topic here. Where was the scariest place you found to ride? City riding. Malibu, actually. Malibu was very, very, very scary. or scarier because there was no hard shoulder, there was nowhere to ride, and some drivers were very aggressive. The scariest things on the road for me were actually in America, RV drivers in America. So some of them would be driving these monstrosities, like just these absolute monster recreational vehicles, these RVs, these caravans, and you don't actually need a license to drive an RV in America. So you've got people who've got no experience driving these massive truck-like things, and they were really, really scary. Surprisingly, in Mexico, the truck drivers were incredibly respectful. So sometimes you're riding down Route 1 and there's no hard shoulder, there's nowhere else for you to ride, and they would move right over onto the other side of the road. Very, very polite. 9 times out of 10, they all did that. Where is the best place that you'd want to go back to? Where was the best place that you want to go back to? To be honest, I really enjoyed my time in, I don't know if it's because of the people, but basically LA was awesome. I really enjoyed spending time in San Diego with this awesome lady called Nicole, who was super fun. Spending time with Goldie was excellent. Meeting Sarah, another member of the Tough Girl tribe, who's going to be running the Marathon des Sables. Meeting her was super cool. Oregon coastline was beautiful. Big Sur was incredible. One of my highlights, to be honest, was actually riding over the Golden Gate Bridge into San Francisco. I mean, that was huge. I was so excited seeing this bridge, which I'd seen previously. You see it on photos, you see it in movies all the time, you see it on the television, but to actually get to ride over it was just incredible. I felt like I'd reached this milestone, because when you first start off on the journey and you're covering these distances, and it's like, where did you start Vancouver? It's like, it's only like 100k or 100 miles away. But as soon as you get further and further, and then people end up getting more and more impressed. So it's like, wow, you've traveled from Vancouver to here, and you feel as though you're really making progress. So riding to San Francisco was incredible. Seeing Santa Monica Pier was absolutely amazing. To be honest, crossing the border into Mexico was incredible, and also reaching Cabo. It's happiness, and it's also it's tinged with sadness, because it's the end of your journey. Phew, I've answered a lot of questions. I hope that gives you more of, are there any other questions? I hope that gives you more of an idea about my adventure and about the challenge. As I said, I have vlogged the journey, so these vlogs will be coming out, and hopefully you'll be able to see more of the stories. I suppose I need to sum it up in some way. I suppose, okay, how can I sum this up? It was incredible. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was high points, there was low points, but I also realized at the same time how incredibly privileged and how incredibly lucky I was to be out there riding my bike. And I got to do that because of the incredible patrons who support the Tough Girl podcast, who support me, who support Tough Girl Challenges, who support the mission, who want me to be able to share these journeys with them. I do understand that this is not something that everybody would like to do or could do. And I'm very privileged that, I am fit and I'm healthy, and that I can go out and do this and have the confidence to rock up to Vancouver without a bike and find a bike and just start cycling. And so to be able to share that with you all is, it's an incredible privilege. And I do just want to thank everybody for your support through your messages on Facebook, your messages on Instagram stories, for the emails that you've sent me, especially when I did share, when I've had a bad day or, something had gone wrong. But equally when I shared the good stuff, because I actually started to feel guilty when I was having too good a time. I was like, I'm having too much fun. And I felt guilty for it. And I'm trying to realize that I shouldn't, because actually at the end of the day, those 3 months, it taken me 3.5 years to get to that point where I could take through, the 3 months off to go and do that adventure, and then obviously, carry on to Australia, which is where I am at the moment. So I do feel incredibly privileged, and I just want to say a massive thank you to you all. If you want to learn more about where I am, what I'm doing, then please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com. But basically, I'm going to be in Australia, Melbourne. If you are in Melbourne, please get in contact. I'd love to meet up with you for a coffee, go kayaking, go swimming, go for a hike, go for a walk. Please send me an email, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com. You can also DM me on Instagram stories. I always love to hear from you. I'd love to meet you. If you've got any feedback that you want to know, that you'd like to give me about Tough Girl Challenges, about the podcast, please do get in contact. I always want to hear from you. But I'm going to be in Melbourne until the end of February. Then I'm going off to India. I'm going to Goa, and I'm going to be doing yoga for 1 month. And this is basically going to be my digital detox, my body recharge, refresh, because my body's been through a lot with Marathon des Sables, with the Appalachian Trail, with the cycling. So I want to do a month of just yoga, stretching, sort my knees out, sort my glutes out, sort my arms out, and refresh the mind as well. So no social media. The Tough Girl podcast will still continue to come out. The blog posts every Friday will still continue to come out, but I just won't be sharing for that month. So that month I'll go completely offline, and then I fly back to the UK. I think I leave on the 31st of March from Goa. I'll be back in the UK on the 1st of April. And then I did want to move out of home, but that is not going to happen. I'm just not in a financial situation to be able to do that. So I'll be moving back in with my parents in April 2019, and I'll be there for the foreseeable future. I've got no idea what the plans are going to be like for 2019, but I will be doing another podcast episode coming out at the end of December, reflecting on 2018 and talking more about the plans for 2019, my own personal plans, and also my vision for Tough Girl Challenges, the Tough Girl blog and the Tough Girl podcast. So subscribe to the Tough Girl podcast so you can learn more about what's going to be happening. But I'm very excited. We're also going to be kicking off the year with a new podcast episode with Abby Naylor, who has been doing 34 phenomenal endurance challenges. Abby has been absolutely smashing it in 2018. So super excited that she'll be sharing that with us. After Abby, we're then going to be speaking to Misha Khan, who was with Felicity Aston on the Euro-Arabian expedition that was done in 2018. And then we're going to be speaking to Ashaya McGowan all about cycling. So we've got some incredible guests coming up in 2019. I'm so excited to be able to share this with you. But enough from me. Have a wonderful Christmas wherever you are in the world. Yeah, Happy New Year. And I'm so excited to see what the future is going to bring. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. All right, take care. Bye.